podcast. My name is Laura Rupel, and I would like to first of all say thank you for all the great feedback on the last episode with Kevin Holtzman. I think that was the most feedback from listeners I'd gotten on an episode, so I wanted to just express my gratitude and thanks. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing one of my professors this semester, Dr. Stephen Meyer, professor of musicology at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. I hope you enjoy. How did you get your start in music?
Well, I think like many people, I grew up with music. I grew up singing and playing the piano, and my mom was a music teacher. And I mean, I can still remember driving in the car with her when I was a little boy, and she taught me to sing a harmony part to Amazing Grace. And she sang the melody and I sang the harmony part. And to me, this was like an entirely new revelation. It was so, I was transformed by it. So I think I had a few moments like that that really changed me. Definitely my high school experience really shaped me. And then when I was an undergraduate, just by chance, I ended up getting a job singing with the San Francisco Opera Chorus. So I did that for a while, and that was really transformative for me. Just getting to know the operatic repertoire and being on stage, and it was really fascinating. So that really shaped me as well.
When was it that you realized you wanted to study music in college?
I actually got an undergraduate degree in regular history.
Okay.
Just not music history. And it was at the end of that degree that I kind of realized that I really wanted to try music performance, because I had this job in the opera chorus and I got a lot of encouragement. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that. So it was really during my undergraduate, and I went to Indiana and got a second undergraduate degree in music, and then also a master's degree in voice. So I really didn't follow that career path until I was an undergraduate.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, encouraging for a lot of people to hear, maybe thinking it's too late if they've already made a decision or already have their undergraduate degree. So that's cool to hear, I think.
Yeah. No, it's never too late.
Yeah.
Right? Good.
What made you want to go to Indiana?
I had a voice teacher when I was just sort of in high school. I took some lessons, and she was a graduate from Indiana, and she really I kind of extolled it. And I was captured, I think, by the idea. I grew up in California, so I was captured by the idea of moving to another part of the country and experiencing something new. So that was also a part of it.
What's something you struggled with when you were in your undergraduate studying voice?
I never got it completely together in terms of my technique. And the fact that I'm a little hoarse right now is testimony to the fact that, I was always kind of a natural singer, and I didn't really know what was going on. So as a consequence, I would sometimes get vocal fatigue, and I really had trouble with the kind of endurance aspect of vocal training. And ultimately, I figured that it was too much of a hurdle. I couldn't overcome it. Yeah.
That shift in your mind of going into musicology versus performance, do you think that was based on the vocal fatigue, or were there other elements?
Well, I've always been a lover of history. So for me, I didn't really know that musicology existed as a career until I got to Indiana. And there I saw that, wow, it did. And I began to think of this as possibly a better option for me. I also had a professor at Indiana who I just really admired, and I still do admire him. And he was really a kind of shaping influence for me. I've tried to let him know how much of an impact he had on my development, but definitely like some key people in the course of my education.
If you think you weren't a musician, maybe you'd never gone back to school for that, what would you be doing?
Oh, I think I'd probably be an academic of some sort. I love the whole life of an academic, the life of the mind. So I think I would have studied something else, maybe something like political science,
Okay.
something like that. I can see, I'm fascinated with that stuff even today. So I can imagine that I might have taken that kind of path.
Hmm. Have you changed your focus of your career in your professional life?
Oh yeah, you've probably heard of this folk tale of the hedgehog and the fox from Aesop's fables.
Mm.
It's used by the thinker Roland Barthes. He used this as a way to describe different intellectuals. Not that I'm on the level of any of the intellectuals that Barthes described, but he said there are two kinds of intellectuals. One is like a hedgehog. They burrow deeply down into one topic and they just become the absolute expert on that. And the others are like foxes
Mm.
that go from topic to topic and jump around, move around from place to place. I'm definitely in that latter category.
Mm.
So, I started out as an opera scholar, and I still teach a lot of opera. I wrote my first book on Carl Maria von Weber, and did a lot of publication with Wagner and Beethoven, that kind of world.
Mhm.
And then I really moved into film music, and published a book on film music, two books on film music, and a lot of other things as well. Um, and I was also the director, or I should say, the editor of the Journal of Music History Pedagogy.
Mm.
So I'm also really interested in like the science of teaching and learning and how that applies to musicology. So I've been moving around a lot, and I'd say I'm still kind of in that sort of world.
Mhm.
So yeah, my interests have changed all the time. That's one of the great things about this profession, is that you can change and grow and develop. It's really great.
Is there something catching your eye right now?
Well, right now, the huge thing that's going on in my field, and it's really throughout the humanities,
Mhm.
the key term here is decolonizing the music history curriculum, like understanding the extent to which the kinds of music that we've traditionally studied in CCM,
Mhm.
the Eurocentric canon, mostly written by dead white men, that how that's kind of bound up with just the whole history of race in this country and ideas of white supremacy. And
Mhm.
for me, I'm grappling with this big issue because I've always identified myself as a liberal and
Mhm.
somebody who's progressive and, very much an advocate for social justice. And that's a part of my core identity.
Mhm.
And yet I also have to realize, like, my profession
Mhm.
was really shaped around this canon, and the whole profession is changing right now, but we don't really know where we're going
Mhm.
and whether or not really there's a place. And so my interest right now is really on these institutional and big ideological questions, and
Mhm.
how do I fit into them, and also how does CCM fit into them, like a conservatory of music. I mean, I don't have to tell you, like symphony orchestras, opera companies, right there, it's a crisis mode for
Mhm.
that part of the world. And at CCM, we're tied up with that.
Mhm.
Like a lot of our students, their career goal is, I want to get an orchestra job. So what's our reason for existence if orchestra jobs no longer exist,
Mhm.
right? Then what are we doing? So these are the questions that I'm thinking about, and I'm not alone. Like, we're all
Yeah.
thinking about that and trying to figure our way out of it. Or figure our way to the next stage, I guess. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's what's catching my eye right now, definitely.
Looking back on your career, are there specific detour moments that maybe you got a job somewhere or changed focus in a certain way?
Yeah, I would say, just like, obviously getting a job at all is a big
Mhm.
change, but 5 years ago, a little more than 5 years ago now, um, my wife was hired as the senior vice provost at University of Cincinnati,
Mhm.
and that's when I came to CCM. She's since moved on to another position,
Mhm.
but this job has been real transformative for me.
Mhm.
I, you know, I feel like I really slid right into it very easily, and it feels like a good fit for me. So that's been really transformative, and it's also, CCM is a big conservatory, so it I feel like these questions that we are just talking about,
Mhm.
namely, what's the future of our field? What about music and higher education? That coming to CCM really made me think much more deeply about those questions in general. So I would say that's really kind of a turning point for me.
Mhm. What brought you to the job you're in today, meaning not specifically CCM, but being a professor of musicology?
Well, you know what? It's what do you have to do day in, day out? There are two things. One, you have to be a writer
Mhm.
and a researcher. So that scholarly aspect. So I've always enjoyed that. I know some people, they don't like writing and they find it just difficult. And I've always enjoyed that process. And so that's one of the things that's been crucial. Then the other thing is teaching. And for me, there was a direct connection back to being a performer. I guess my insight that happened very early on is that I realized that teaching is essentially a kind of performance,
Mhm.
right? And so that it's, in a way, it's really not all that different than what I was training to do as a singer. It was just a sort of different version of performance.
Mhm.
And having that insight really, I think, really helped me. And then I also think that my experience studying music and as a performer really has helped me, in, especially at a place like CCM,
Mhm.
because folks like you, I was sitting in your seat, 30 years ago
Mhm.
with exactly the same sort of set of ambitions and desires. And so I hope that it gives me a kind of empathy
Mhm.
with my students.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Good. I hope so.
What is some advice you have for younger students whom things are not going as expected?
Yeah, I do have advice. I say it's about skills and not about content.
Mm.
So, we're studying operas of Handel. And I hope that people love this music like I love it. That's one of the things that I want students to get. It's just like, wow, this is beautiful and this is expressive and really like thinking about the ideas and just enjoyment, pleasure, right? And the kind of soul stirring pleasure that's um, not superficial, but rather it really touches on what it means to be human.
Mhm.
And I love this stuff because I do believe that when some of those arias, it's like, okay, this was written 300 years ago, and yet it's touching on this fundamental human quality that I have and that you have. And I think that's really beautiful. But even more important than learning that, just like having that emotional response, it's learning these concrete skills,
Mhm.
like learning how to express yourself, writing. Later on in class, we're going to be doing creative projects. Like, how do you nurture your own creativity?
Mhm.
How do you actually do that? And because, we can't look into the future and know what it's going to be like.
Mhm.
It's changing so fast right now that we can't. It's like if we start trying to prepare you for a specific job, that job could not maybe it won't even be there in 5
Mhm.
years. So what we can try to do is to give you skills that you can transfer to other kinds of positions. So, one of our musicology, it's like the job market is terrible right now, horrible. So one of our recent graduates, she had a job at working kind of more closely in the field, and there was downsizing and she was let go. Well, she just got a job with an engineering firm. Well, why? Well, I like to think it's partly because she writes really well.
Mhm.
She's really good at processing information and kind of figuring out, all right, well, what's the most important thing that I want to say about this really complicated morass of things? Like, how am I going to get through it and get to the interesting point?
Mhm.
And I like to think that she developed those skills working with us. And now it's a completely different field, doesn't have anything to do with music,
Mhm.
but she's still making a way for herself. So that's encouraging.
Mhm.
I was recently asked to write an essay about what we are all learning, what we're learning as teachers in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of boiled it all down to three words. And, the pandemic we experience it as impediment all the time. Like I can't go over to friends' houses. I have to wear a mask here. It's like it's problem. And working like this is, it's not, I wouldn't choose to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, it teaches you things. So I think that's really important. So here are my three words. One is dialogue, like the importance of actually creating this dialogue and really like listening intently, like turning your mute button on sometimes, right? So you're not like blah, 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 like I'm probably doing now. Dialogue. The other one is humility. Right. I'm just like, I'm humbled all the time by the changes in the field. And also sometimes I'm just like, we can't do that. I wanted to do that, but we can't do that. But that word humility is actually related to the word humus, which means ground or soil.
Mm.
So I like to think that humility has to do also with like breaking things down so that they can kind of become the soil in which new seeds can take root and grow. So I think that that's something I'm learning as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last word is centering. That field is changing really, really rapidly, but we still have to figure out somewhere in all of that center, right? Finding that place of balance that makes everything else possible. So really kind of getting back to those core ideas that really motivate you, whatever they are, and really doubling down on those.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you talk about the field changing so much and our teachers at CCM wanting us to have kind of a framework of skills, because I think as a student, it can be very hard to find our place right now, or the motivations a lot of us had going into a degree are kind of like, maybe that isn't really accurate anymore. So I do feel lucky to be at a school and to be working with people who are helping me and are realistic about like that one job that I maybe wanted 5 years ago isn't going to be there in 5 years.
The fact, Laura, that you've taken the initiative to like create a blog and do all this, create this site, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a part of, I can tell that's like what drives you? Where's your center?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about communicating with people.
Mm-hmm.
And really, making that sort of connection and, thinking about ideas and that kind of stuff. And sure, that can be, that can have to do with your primary mode could be playing the oboe.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably want that.
Mm-hmm.
But that fundamental idea of who you are, that urge to express yourself and to engage people,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great skill. And what you're doing right now is you're developing it. So more power to you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening to that interview as much as I did. I certainly appreciate Dr. Meyer taking the time to speak with me, and it is extremely reassuring as a student to hear that my professors are conscious of our time, conscious of our future, and are keeping really present and aware of what conversations are going on in the music world right now. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, there are multiple ways you can do so. First of all, you can go to our website, which is detoursinmusicpodcast.weebly.com. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called Detours in Music Podcast. We also have a Facebook page and Instagram account where you can like and follow us. The Detours in Music Podcast is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, but on Apple Music podcast apps, you can subscribe and rate us. If you ever want to get in touch with me and give more direct feedback, you can email me at detoursinmusicpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you catch the next one.